Live video will begin in a moment. And we're on. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Facebook Live. I'm David Shepherd. And I say good evening, I mean it depends where you are in the world. It's good evening for us here in southwest London. Though obviously if you're on the east coast, it's probably good afternoon or about lunchtime, west coast in the morning. And for our people out in Australia, it's definitely good morning. So welcome to our weekly Facebook Live. For those of you new here, I always like to say a great big welcome to you. This live goes out every Thursday night at 7 p.m. or 1900 GMT. And I cover topics about NLP, about hypnosis, about timeline therapy, about Line and Huna, and personal development and personal transformation in general. If you've got a particular topic that you'd like me to cover one week, then please PM me on Facebook and I'll be more than delighted to actually do that. And for those of you that are regulars, I know we've got some good regulars that have been here. This is Facebook Live number 14. Then welcome back and thank you for all of your support over the weeks since the beginning of January. We started out the first one, Facebook Live number 1. Carmel and Kate, hi, thanks for joining us. We started out first week in January and we've been going ever since. And my commitment is that wherever I am in the world, whatever I'm doing, there will be a Facebook Live at 7 p.m. GMT every Thursday. So this week, what I thought we would cover, and actually it was a question from Claire that kind of like had me think about this, is the NLP communications model, which, you know, it's the first thing we ever learn in NLP. Though I love this model because no matter how far you go in NLP, whether it's practitioner, master practitioner, trainer, or master trainer, everything you learn fits onto this one single piece of paper. So it's a real major anchor for us. Steve Bishop, Regina, hope you're well. Then, but I wanted to cover it in one particular aspect because we can cover this in a number of different aspects, but tonight I want to cover it in one particular aspect, which is how is it possible for people to use NLP techniques like swish patterns, submodality belief change, submodality mapping across, collapsing anchors, visual squash parts integration, timeline therapy techniques to release emotions like anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt, and get rid of limiting decisions like I'm not good enough, or I can't make the kind of money I want, or even using hypnosis to get rid of a fear or phobia of public speaking or presenting, or even then the Line and Huna techniques like Ho'oponopono, the Keave process, or cool. How is it possible that we can use these techniques, or somebody could use these techniques to actually change their life, to actually change their experience of their life? I see Mihol's here as well. Great, over there in Belfast. Welcome again. Good to speak to you yesterday, Mihol. So what I want to explain is, you know, for many of you, if you've done an NLP training already, this will be familiar. If you haven't, then it will be new. And no matter how familiar you are with this, it's really important because when we're working with a client or a group around personal change, around personal transformation, it's really important that they understand this because this is what makes it possible for somebody over the space of a session, maybe 90 minutes if it's a Fix My Mind session, or 6 hours if it's a breakthrough session, or a weekend if it's something like our Fix Your Mind weekend seminar that we've got coming up. It's important they understand this because this is what makes it possible for people to have an experience of changing their life in the future. So what we've got here is, over on the right-hand side of the page is the external event. This is what's happening outside of our nervous system. And we have information streaming in through our 5 senses, visual information from our eyes, auditory information from our ears, kinesthetic information from touch and feel, olfactory information from smell, and gustatory information from taste. Now, here's an interesting thing, actually, which I thought about. As you'll see from this diagram here, this is why I'm an NLP master trainer and not an artist. Now, you see, the thing was, I had a limiting belief that I couldn't draw. So I got rid of it. And then I realized it wasn't a limiting belief. So there we go. So we're getting all this information coming in from our 5 senses, and it's been estimated, I'm going to write this number up just so you get an order of magnitude on this. It's been estimated that we receive as much as 12 million bits of information every second through our nervous system, whether we're awake or asleep. Now, to put that into some perspective, if I've got my iPad here, this is a 64 gigabyte iPad. If we put information onto that iPad, the rate that you are currently receiving information as you're watching this video, the iPad would be full in way less than a day. Now, you've been receiving that amount of information every single second of every single day that you've been alive. And I can guarantee you, you're nowhere near full. We're not going to have to reboot you or upgrade your software or upgrade your hardware anytime soon. But you can imagine what it would be like if we were consciously aware of all of that information that's streaming into our nervous system right now. And so what our unconscious mind does, running in the hardware of our nervous system, is it filters the information that's coming in. And I've put a number of filters here. We'll look at those in detail. But the big ones at the top here are firstly deletion. Deletion is where your unconscious mind literally deletes information from your experience. Like currently it's probably deleting the experience of your right shoe on your right foot. Or at least it was until I brought your conscious attention to it. If your unconscious mind was anything like mine, it was going, does David need to be aware of what's happening in his right shoe at this particular point in time to do this Facebook Live? Answer is no, and it deletes it from my experience. You've had it in communications when you know you've told somebody something, and then they go, you never told me that. You never said it. And you absolutely know you did. For whatever reason, they deleted it. Or, the phenomena of the disappearing house keys or the disappearing car keys. They're not there at all. You can't see them, but a well-meaning friend of yours goes, they're here, and they were there all the time. That's deletion. That's happening all of the time. We're deleting information all of the time. Then we've got distortion. This is where your unconscious mind makes something of the information coming in that it's not. I remember the first night that I moved into my house. At the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, the burglar alarm went off. And at the start, I'm going, oh, there's a burglar downstairs. First night that I move in. Get the courage to go downstairs and see it's a fault with the burglar alarm with one of the detectors in the lounge. So I reset the burglar alarm knowing that it's just a fault on the alarm system. Did I have to check the front and the back door? Yes. Did I have to check all of the windows? Yes. Did I have to check behind all of the doors? Yes. Did I check under the beds, in the wardrobes? Yes. I get to bed. Even though I know there's nobody in the house, my heart is still pounding like crazy for another 10 or 15 minutes. And then every single squeak, every single sound in the house for the rest of that night was, did I check everywhere? And that night, every single sound sounded like somebody in the house. That's distortion. And then we generalize information, which is how we learn. I use this example. I was doing a seminar for a group of stand-up comedians actually on Sunday. Great experience, great day. And they'd never been to that particular training venue before. But I said to them, you've never been here before, yet, you came through the door just fine. You have generalizations for the ways that doors work. You came down the stairs just fine, even though you'd never seen those stairs before. We have generalizations for the way that stairs work. So we're generalizing all of the time, and our generalizations form our belief structures. So we're creating generalizations. The question is, do they work for us or do they not work for us? In a little bit more detail, language is a filter. So for those of you out there who are bilingual or multilingual, then, whenever I ask anybody that kind of question, then, they always say that the world is a different place depending on the language that they're thinking in. Our beliefs, you've heard that famous saying, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're absolutely right. Then, our beliefs are a filter. And, if we've created a belief in our past, for instance, that we're not good enough, any information that comes in that would give us evidence that we are good enough would be filtered through that particular filter. We'd either delete the evidence that we were good enough, or we'd distort it so that it no longer meant that, or we'd say, oh, you know, people are always saying these kind of things to me, and it's never true. Generalizations. Our values are also filters that filter our experience. Our meta programs, as an example, I talked about these in a previous Facebook Live. If somebody sorts by difference, for instance, would also tend to sort by detail rather than global. Difference rather than sameness. And somebody has this meta program, they can walk into a room and the first thing that they spot is the one tiny thing that's moved. Whereas somebody's more global and somebody's more sameness walks into the room and everything looks in order as it always has done. This changes the way that we experience the world. And then our memories. Our experiences in the past change the way that we filter things. So what does this all mean? What it means is that this is what's actually going on outside. We filter it in an instant, although it's not really an instant, it takes around about half a second before we create what's called in NLP an internal representation, which is the pictures, the sounds, the feelings, the smells and the tastes, and the self-talk that goes along inside of what you experience as probably being inside your head. And if I was to ask you to stop now and go inside, then my guess is that you're either seeing pictures, you're hearing sounds, you're having feelings, you're smelling smells, you're tasting tastes, or you're talking to yourself. Hopefully you are, because if you weren't, we'd have to check for a pulse. Now, here's the real thing with this. And this is what makes it possible for things like NLP, for hypnosis, for Line Therapy and Huna techniques to work. What you are experiencing right now is not that. What you're experiencing right now is this. You are experiencing your own internal representation of this video that you're watching. Now, a lot of my videos, I've noticed, have got as many as 2,000 views. If this video, hopefully this video, share this video if you want to make sure it does. If this video gets 2,000 views, what I know for sure is that there are 2,000 different versions of that video, and none of them are exactly like the video that I think I'm actually performing and presenting to you at this particular point in time. Because every single one of those 2,000 people will be filtering that external event that's coming in their own unique way. Kevin Lay, hi Kevin, good to see you. And I've been watching everything you've been doing on Facebook with SciTap and all those kind of things. Looks like it's going really great. So well done, and keep going with that. Now, just to give you a representation of this, I normally do this with my phone, but obviously my phone's tied up doing something else. But my iPad's got a camera in it. And, you know, that camera, I think, in this particular iPad is around about 8 megapixels. If we compared that to the physical hardware of our eyes, then each of our eyes is estimated to be the equivalent of a 1 megapixel camera. So we're peering out at the world through two 1 megapixel cameras. These particular 1 megapixel cameras are rather unique because they have a hole in the middle of the sensor, if we were to look at it as far as like an electronic camera, in the sensor where the optic nerve comes out of the back of the eye. Though your experience right now, as you're watching this video and whatever's surrounding you, wherever you are, is your experience that you're peering out of the world through two. There we go. Siri doesn't understand NLP. So we'll have to put it on a training pretty shortly to get it caught up with those kind of information. So it is your experience that you're peering out of the world through two 1 megapixel cameras. You know, some people have said, is David Shepard's Facebook Live really live? Well, there you have the evidence. Well, of course it's not. Our experience is that we're looking out at this sensory-rich video picture, which is way beyond the highest quality of video capabilities at this point in time. So where is this video that you're experiencing? Is it out here or is it in here? Actually, it's in here. This is what you're experiencing. And this is the only thing that you can experience. You can't experience this directly in consciousness. Mark Richardson. Hey, Mark, how are you? Great to see you. Now, the important thing with that is that your internal representation changes the way that you feel. We've got state here. For those of you new to NLP, state means how you're feeling emotionally. Now, why is that important? Because the way that we feel determines our behavior. You know, think about it. Do you behave differently when you're feeling good than when you're feeling bad? Of course you do. And does the different behaviors that come from feeling bad behavior and feeling good behavior cause different results? Yes, it does. So our emotional state, moment by moment, is directly related to the results that we're getting in our life. And our state is impacted by our physiology. You know when someone's in a bad state compared to a good state, just because of the way that they look, the way that they walk, the way that they stand, all of those kind of things. We have leakage of our state into our physiology. But equally, our physiology changes our state. Think about it. How long does it take for the feeling of a bad day to disappear when you get into the gym for a workout? It's gone really quickly, isn't it? It's because the physiology of a bad day is totally different than the physiology of working out, running on the treadmill, working out with weights, etc. It changes our state. Now, here's how this is therefore possible to use techniques like NLP, timeline therapy, hypnosis, and Huna to change people's state, to change their behavior, and therefore to change the results that they're getting in their life. So the problem is never that. The problem is never the external event. The problem is always our internal representation of the external event. Let's say that we were working with somebody that had a phobia of lifts. Is it the lift that causes the phobia? Well, no, because if it was actually the lift, everyone would have a phobia of lifts, and they don't. So the problem isn't the lift, which of course we can't change. The problem is our internal representation of the lift, which we can change. Here's another example. If I was to come to you and say, my life's a complete mess right now because of this thing that happened when I was 7, then that is absolutely not true, because I'm not 7, I'm 54. Equally, even when I was 7, what I was experiencing wasn't that, it was that. Now, we can't change what happened when you were 7. No matter how much we'd really love to be able to change the things that happen to us in our life, we can't. Life's life. It's done. It happened. Fortunately, what we can change with things like NLP, timeline therapy techniques, hypnosis, and Huna is we can change that. We can change our internal representation of the memory of what we have that happened when we were age 7. Because memories are fragile. All the police forces in the world know this, actually. They know that if there's an incident, and let's say there's 30 witnesses to this incident, they know they're going to get 30 different incident reports, 30 different eyewitness reports, because in the moment, each one of those 30 people filter the event differently. And quite often those witness reports are substantially different. And they also know that when they go back to those witnesses 6 months later, every single one of them will give a different eyewitness report. And they will absolutely swear that the one that they've given today is the correct one compared to the one they gave 6 months ago. We change our memories. We do it all of the time. Ernest Rossi, who is Milton Erickson's protege, really, the person who spent more time with Milton Erickson than anybody else probably, in his book Psychobiology of Mind-Body Healing, said that whenever we recover a memory into consciousness, we change it forever. This is why we have experiences like, we meet somebody that we haven't met for a long time, maybe like 10 or 15 or 20 years or so. And, we sit down and we begin to reminisce about events that have happened in the past. And if you're anything like me, you have this experience where you go, I could have sworn I was there, but I don't remember it anything like they do. Why is that? For the 20 years that have gone by, each person has remembered that particular event. And whenever they remember it, what happens is the versions of the memory get further apart. See, if I remember something that happened when I was 7, as an example, I can't remember it as a 7-year-old. I remember it as a 54-year-old. I run the memory through my 54-year-old memories rather than my 7-year-old memories. Just that alone changes the memory, changes my experience of it, changes the way that memory makes me feel, and therefore would have an impact on the results I get. It's a great story, and it's in Tony Robbins' book, Unleash the Giant Within. And, I don't know if you know Tony Robbins, but Tony Robbins is massively into reference experiences. Things that have happened in a person's past that have changed the course of their life from that moment on. And he's always asking people, what was your reference experience? What was it that put you on the track that you're on right now? And he was interviewing somebody, the guy had committed murder. He'd been convicted of murder. And because of the state where he was convicted, he was on death row and he was waiting for the death penalty. And Tony Robbins meets with him and he said, so, I'm interested. What was it that happened in your past that led you to commit murder, to then be found guilty and to be waiting to be executed on death row? And the guy says to him, well, Tony, what do you think? What do you expect? My father was an alcoholic drug addict. He beat the crap out of my mum, me and my brother every day. How do you expect me to turn out? How do you expect my life to be? And when you hear that kind of history from somebody, you kind of get an understanding of it begins to become a little bit more understandable how this person could do this. And a week later, Tony Robbins is interviewing somebody else, and this is almost the chalk and cheese, the absolute polar opposite. It's another guy, and this guy is living the American dream. He's a multimillionaire, entrepreneur, married, family, houses, kids, cars, the works, living the dream. And Tony asks him the same question. He says to him, so, I'm interested. What was it that happened in your past that have led you to create this life that most people would think would be the American dream? And the guy goes, well, Tony, what do you expect? He said, my father was an alcoholic drug addict that beat the crap out of my mum, me, and my brother every day. How do you expect me to turn out? What do you expect me to do with my life having had that experience? This is where Tony does the big reveal, and we discover that these two men that he's interviewed are brothers. The same external event was happening for each of them. The alcoholic, drug addict father beating the family, beating the mother, beating them. What they made of that, their internal representation that they made of it, whether through their filtering, what meaning they therefore put on it, the state that came out of it, the behavior, and therefore the results they got, created two diametrically opposed results, two diametrically opposed lives. So the exciting thing I find from this is, and this is something I realized for myself, it doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter where you are. The only thing that matters is where you want to be. That's the only thing that really matters. Because with the technologies of NLP, of hypnosis and timeline therapy and Huna, we can change this thing. We can't change that. We can't change what's happened to you in your life. Even if you wanted to. We can't. But where you are in your life is not due to that. Where you are in your life is due to this. That we can change. And we're changing it all the time. It's a natural thing. All we learn to do with NLP and hypnosis and timeline therapy and Huna techniques is we learn how to change it in a way that empowers us and enables us to do what we want. Now, if we were to put that in a number of different ways, just in summing up, because I see we've already done my half an hour, then, you know, in a lot of NLP trainings, we talk about the C leading to the E, what some people call the cause and effect equation. And the cause and effect doesn't come from NLP. It predates NLP. You can even find it in a book which is out of copyright now. It's available as a free ebook on the internet. The Kabbalion, which is written by the three initiates. It's a book about Hermetic wisdom and Hermetic teachings. Has cause and effect in there. And what this is actually saying from a cause and effect point of view is that the majority of people live at the effect side of the equation. As in, they live at the effect side of that. Where their life is at this particular point in time is as a result of external situations and circumstances. What we're saying here is, when we understand the NLP communications model, is we can move to here. And, you know, sometimes people find it a little bit difficult to get their head around that, you know, and also, if you were to look at it purely black and white, in some instances, it's not necessarily a useful way for people to think. But here's another spin on this. What we do know from the NLP communications model and what I've just talked about, what we do know is that we create our experience moment by moment in our nervous system, and actually completely, in the main, unconsciously, until we know how to do it differently. So we're creating our experience, moment by moment. We're creating our experience of the past. We're creating our experience right now. And we'll continue to create our experience in the future. The only question is, are you creating the experience that you want, or the experience that you don't want? This in itself is what Carl Jung was talking about with perception is projection. He said that all we have is a perception of other people, a perception of the events, the situations and circumstances outside of us, because of what we now call the NLP communications model. And what Carl Jung was talking about was what we, from an NLP point of view, if we were to correlate the two together, what we project onto the outside world. What we project onto other people, what we project onto external situations and circumstances is our filters. Which means that if we change our filters, if we change what our memories mean, if we release the negative emotions like anger, sadness, fear, hurt and guilt from memories in the past, if we delete limiting decisions or limiting beliefs of I'm not good enough or I'll never make the kind of money that I want, it changes our experience, changes our state, it enables us to get different results moment by moment. I actually love a particular quote from Richard Bandler, one of the creators of NLP, somebody I think that we owe a great thanks to for creating this wonderful thing along with John Grinder, which is, the Bandler quote is this. He said one of the biggest things that he learned from his discovery of NLP was that he could be happy for no good reason. Whereas most people go, I'll be happy when? I'll be happy if. I'll be happy when this happens. I'll be happy when I have this. Whereas in actual fact, what we've got here is you can be in a good state all the time, provided you choose to do that. And that's what makes it possible to do a session with someone. Like, for instance, we do sessions with people in Fix My Mind, and literally they will come in with a phobia or a panic attack or anxiety, and literally 90 minutes later they leave without it. Because it wasn't out here, it was in there. It wasn't speaking in public, it wasn't having an audience in front of you, it was in there. It wasn't a lift or an elevator, it was in there. It wasn't the underground, it was in there. And that means we can create rapid change with these kind of things. in our weekend seminars coming up shortly, the Fix Your Mind seminar, then I'm going to be guiding the entire group through using these techniques to change these things so that they change their values, they change their beliefs, they let go of their anger, their sadness, their fear, hurt and guilt from events in the past. They get rid of major limiting decisions, but equally create their future with certainty. Because, you know, a lot of people at this point in time, and, you know, I was looking at the news just before we went live and saw that, you know, the US has dropped one of the biggest bombs in the world on Afghanistan. And we look at the news and look at the newspapers, and there's a lot of uncertainty there. There's a lot of uncertainty with that kind of stuff. There's a lot of uncertainty with Brexit here in Europe. And a lot of people find it difficult to deal with that uncertainty. But where's the uncertainty? You can't change that out there. But the sense of uncertainty, the fear that goes with uncertainty, isn't out there. It's in here. That you can change, and therefore be able to, no matter what kind of uncertainty there is outside of you, to create certainty inside of you, which enables you to continue to be able to achieve your goals. That, I think, is one of the most amazing things about what I've been studying for the last 24 years. This thing that I started out studying with neuro-linguistic programming, then discovered timeline therapy and mental emotional release techniques, then with hypnosis and hypnotherapy, then also with the Line and Huna. What I learned was techniques that enable people to fundamentally change what they do with their life. And I know that they work because I experienced it myself, and I've experienced it with thousands and thousands of people since. And I think that's the most amazing thing. And one of the reasons why I do these Facebook Lives, because I want more and more people to become aware of these, because really, this is the stuff that we should have been taught at school. So I hope that's been useful for you tonight. Here in the UK, we have a holiday weekend. So if you're celebrating Easter, then happy Easter. If you're celebrating something else, then, you know, have a great celebration. If you're not celebrating anything this weekend, then just have a great weekend. And just realize you make the weekend what you make the weekend. I'll see you next Thursday, 1900 GMT, here on Facebook Live. Please share this video with your friends and family if you think they'd value from it. If you've got any questions, then please do PM me. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you right here next week. David Shepherd's Facebook Live.